Chapter 923, After Effects. Sealf didn't notice the change in Alger's eyes. He pointed at one of the cremated primordial moon believers and said, "That cane was taken from me. It's called Word of the Sea. It can release lightning at a target. Waving it and striking it will cause it to be augmented with wind blades. Apart from that, it can also create large water spheres and corrosive rainwater. It can also allow the wielder to not be afraid of deep-sea pressure. They can freely extract oxygen from the water. At the same time, it can also be used as a wand to provide flight." There are 3 negative side effects. First, it enjoys singing. Every 6 hours, it has to belt out a song. The resulting effects don't discriminate between friend or foe. Due to the different choices of songs and styles, it can make one's mind go adrift or have one's mind and soul shocked, and at other times, cause one to be irascible and be in a state of lowered reason. Of course, even without waiting 6 hours, it will also be very willing to sing if you so desire. Second, you can probably tell that it's equipped with living characteristics. Furthermore, it's one that is rather testy. It enjoys tripping, beating, or pulling the wielder downstairs when they aren't paying attention. Third, it will cause the wielder to easily be struck by lightning. Therefore, on stormy days, either don't go out or don't bring it along. This is the sealed artifact that was made from Jayaman Sparrow's ocean, songster Beyonder characteristic. If he were to know that you had already made it and had allowed the primordial moon believer to take it away, you will definitely be sold to someone who is in need of you, in the form of a Beyonder characteristic. Alger looked towards the dining table and saw the black silver inlaid cane. From what he knew, regardless of whether the other negative effects were severe, mystical items with living characteristics were considered sealed artifacts. This was because there were unpredictable dangers associated with them. With Katlia and her companion not telling him that he was done, Sealf could only continue taking out mystical items with a glum face. This short knife is called Blade of Poison. The effects are obvious. There's no need for me to give any additional information, right? Every time it deals damage, it will add on a random poison. As for what it is, it's all luck. Its negative effects aren't too serious. It will only cause medical treatment to fail and the feeling of being drunk to accumulate within the wielder. Sealf continued introducing a few mystical items and finally heard Katlia say, "Excellent, the rest are yours." Phew, she still left me with 3. Not only did Sealf not bear a grudge, he felt deep down how nice a person Admiral of Stars was. It was as though he had suffered some psychological ailments. Katlia then turned to look at the hanged man. "You pick first." She knew that the World Jayaman Sparrow had commissioned a mystical item to be made by the artisan. Therefore, the hanged man had to first select the crazy adventurer's item first. Alger nodded and took the Word of the Sea and the gargoyle glasses. Then, he indicated that the rest were spoils of war. Katlia thought for a moment and said, "Pick another one, the rest will be mine." She wasn't too interested in the remaining mystical items because she had 2 rather powerful items that suited her. She had also obtained the scales of luck and Judge Buttonlater, thus covering all her bases. Under such a situation, the stacking of negative effects was something to be considered. Unless it was something extremely special, it wasn't something she would take a second look or choose to exchange. Of course, as a pirate admiral, she never found mystical items too excessive. After all, she had to hand over some of them to the Moses Ascetic Order and leave the rest to reward her crew. Alger fell silent for a moment. Starting from what items and Beyonder powers he had, he chose the Blade of Poison. Following that, Katlia instructed Bloodless Heathdoyle to move the mystical items that Sealf had placed on the ground, and the remnant items left by the primordial moon believers, out of the room. Then, she looked at the artisan with her dark purple-hued eyes. "Why do the primordial moon believers want to control you?" Sealf's eyes flickered. "Isn't that simple and obvious? To get me to make mystical items for them." Just as he said that, his heart skipped a beat as a result of the purple eyes that were coldly looking at him. He hurriedly added, "They also seem to have some plan that needs the help of an artisan. As for what it is, I've no idea because it hasn't started." Katlia retracted her gaze while seemingly in thought. Exchanging a silent look with the hanged man, they nodded simultaneously. They decided not to take away the artisan today and to leave him there to monitor the subsequent developments. In other words, they wanted to figure out the primordial moon believers' plans from monitoring him. Actually, for the hermit and the hanged man, whatever the primordial moon believers were plotting wasn't something they cared about. They just each had matters they were concerned about. The former used it to communicate with Queen Mystic to provide her reference material for her strategies in the supernatural world. The latter could use this matter to earn contribution points from the church. Therefore, they had instantly come to a tacit agreement to investigate deeper. Of course, Alger always believed in a principle. The more information he wielded, the more benefits he could obtain from various matters. After a brief silence, Katlia said to Artisan Sealf in the same tone, "Since you're already a primordial moon believer, taking you with me provides me with no benefit." Sealf nodded immediately, agreeing with what she said. Katlia paused for a moment before she said, "However, I wish to establish a long-term working relationship with you. Therefore, I need a few drops of your blood. This will aid me in finding you at any time." Sealf wore a miserable look as his lips quivered, but he was unable to object to it. "Phew." He suddenly exhaled and said, "Okay." With that said, he picked up a paper cutter beside him and sliced his forearm, letting a few drops of blood drip out. Katlia immediately raised her right arm and gently flicked her wrist, causing the few drops of blood to float and fly towards her. After observing the blood in her palm, this pirate admiral suddenly asked, "What's your last name?" "June," Sealf replied instinctively. Katlia didn't say a word as she turned around and walked out the door. Alger followed closely behind. The room quickly turned silent as Sealf sat on the sofa. He sat there motionless for quite a while, as though he was deep in thought over the encounter, being unable to extricate himself from it. 10 minutes later, he suddenly stood up and took out a small human-shaped figurine from his inside pocket. The figurine was brass-colored, and its face was empty. Blood slowly seeped out from it and remained on its surface. Sealf hurriedly wiped the figurine's face with a handkerchief before heaving a sigh of relief. He curled the corners of his lips and silently muttered, "Thankfully, I have this fate puppet. Humph, let's see how you can find me with those drops of blood. Don't even think of cursing me." In the poverty-stricken district of Bayam, on a street without any street lamps, the masked and hooded Alger looked at the hermit beside him. With a deep voice, he said, "After Sealf escaped from the Church of Steam, he has been living safe and sound to this day. This means he's not a fool. For him to so easily give you the blood in such a relaxed manner without putting up any resistance means that he has the means to avoid your tracking." Besides, he didn't mention an explanation of how the primordial moon believers found him. Logically speaking, the believers definitely would have asked him for the origins of the werewolf Beyonder characteristic, but Sealf hadn't mentioned Alger at all. As Katlia took out the pair of heavy glasses and wore it, she said without a change in tone, "It isn't used for tracking." Alger nodded in thought before bidding her farewell, turning into a dark alley. He made several detours and found a chance to remove his disguise before leaving Bayam. After he returned to the Resistance's private harbor, he boarded the Blue Avenger. His sailors had pretty much spent most of their energy and money over the past few days. So at that moment, they were all on the ship, waiting to set off for the seas again. Upon seeing him return, one of the sailors stood up immediately and asked with a smile, "Captain, have you had dinner?" "Not yet, make something simple for me." For the operation, Alger hadn't had a chance to fill his stomach. The sailor, who also did some cooking on the side, immediately replied, "All right, we got some fresh mushrooms in the forest today. How about I pan-fry it with some butter?" Alger's face twitched as he shook his head with a normal expression. "Searing a steak would do, medium rare, a medium done." East Balam, by the periphery of a forest. With his 2 marionettes, Klein wasn't in a rush to leave. He entered a city and planned on getting some dyes to disguise Admiral Hell Ludwell's mask. And before that, he had other things to do. It was to seek out a helper for his exploration of the periphery of Calderon. Klein was never a lone wolf, and it was even more so the case when faced with danger. Therefore, unless he had no options, He would always invite powerhouses to provide him with help by sharing the coordinates and paying the corresponding price. He wasn't one to rashly enter. To him, being able to obtain the desired ingredient while alive was most important. If it wasn't because I know it's impossible, I'd even wish to wait 1 to 2 weeks before I carry a baby or push a pram to head for Calderon. Klein sighed silently as he took out the adventurer's harmonica and blew into it. Silently, Rionette Tinker, with her 4 heads in hand, walked out of the void. Klein deliberated over his words and said, "I plan on exploring Calderon City soon. Well, I've already obtained its coordinates in the spirit world. I'm wondering if I can hire you for your help. What would be the price?" The 4 heads in Rionette Tinker's hand spoke one after another. "Won't do, Ice Ka, enter,"